Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the several hundred British immigrants being deported from Spain over the next few weeks, mostly down to their own arrogance, but also about how the Brexit media is, true to form, completely misrepresenting the situation. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So the Daily Express again. A paper that has a cheek, really, frankly, to ever report any downsides to Brexit as if it's some great injustice because they campaigned for it. They're not just a pro-Brexit paper, they are a pro-hard Brexit paper. In fact, the Brexit we have now is not hard enough for them. They called for and cheered the very aspects of Brexit that are now leading to the deportation of British immigrants from Spain, which, by the way, is how they need to be described. Britons have this unfortunate habit of referring to themselves as expats rather than immigrants when living abroad. This is to protect them from the stigma that our society has allowed to become attached to the word immigrant. So you call yourself an expat because that makes you sound special. It's different. Oh, I'm not an immigrant, I'm an expat. But it's exactly the sort of crap that led to the Brexit mindset. So I'll have no part of it. Like, if you immigrate to a place, you're an immigrant. It's a descriptive word, no negative connotations at all, or there's not supposed to be, unless of course you're a Brexit supporter. The problem with the term expat is that it does two toxic things at once. It allows you to continue to consider immigrants to be a dirty word, you know, feeding into the Brexit xenophobia that allowed this mess to unfold in the first place, including the scenario, the baffling scenario that we had, where you had British immigrants in Spain voting Brexit to deal with immigrants. That's what was allowed to fester in their head because they didn't think of themselves as immigrants. And it's also treating people as a special case just because they're from the UK, which again feeds into the arrogance that allowed Brexit to occur in the first place. If there is ever to be a benefit from Brexit, even if it takes years, I hope it is that we get this exceptionalism beaten out of us and surgically replaced with a bit more national humility. But anyway, back to the Daily Express, who describe 500 Britons being deported due to new rules. So first things first, maybe second thing after the expat outburst. They're not new rules, of course. The media keep doing this. Oh, these people are being deported due to new rules. Oh, this business is struggling due to new rules. Oh, these new EU rules are doing this and they're doing that and they're doing the other. The EU are very hard working, aren't they? They managed to put up with our negotiating nonsense in the middle of a global pandemic last year and still managed to create hundreds of new rules, all in time to come out for January the 1st, 2021. Now, of course they didn't. Whenever the media talk about new EU rules, 99% of the time, they're not new rules. Yes, there are new rules coming online. There are new rules coming online all the time, but the vast majority of the ones being described as new rules in the media are not. These are rules that have been around for years. Indeed, they are rules that the UK eagerly helped implement whilst we were EU members. What they are old rules that have been newly applied to the UK, or at least most of the UK, because we chose to become a third country. They are common third country rules. But they don't phrase it like that, do they? Because then that would be to draw attention to the fact that the Daily Express lied to them all. So they claim that these are new rules. Like the EU just waited for the UK to leave and then implemented a load of new rules that we couldn't possibly have foreseen. Certainly most of these 500 soon to be coming back to the plague island that they helped to create didn't expect it. Perhaps they listened to Boris Johnson when he said that the Vienna Treaty protects the rights of the UK residents in, say, France and elsewhere in the EU. Brexit will make no difference, he said. Actually, no, what am I thinking? I keep forgetting Brexit supporters keep telling me that they're not thick. So obviously they didn't just take the word of the only man in history to be sacked for lying in two of the most dishonest professions there are, journalism and politics. Of course they would have looked up the treaty for themselves and verified that it was a load of rubbish. Of course they would. They're not thick. I must remember that. Now, the idea of someone being forced from their home obviously is nothing to crow about in itself. It's an injustice that all too often and increasingly is perpetrated by our own Home Secretary, for example. However, it has to be borne in mind that there are hundreds of thousands of British immigrants living in Spain. The deportations are a relatively small number of people who disproportionately supported Brexit. Many of them just refused to apply to stay. You know, it's currently less than 1% of the British immigrant population, as it's been reported anyway. So they thought that they didn't have to follow the usual rules because, well, we're British, aren't we? Of course we're going to stay here. I'm not filling a form in. It's that British exceptionalism that is responsible for Brexit. After all, Remainers are not likely to have been so arrogant. So can we at least accept that these were people who brought their misery upon themselves? Largely. Now, some of them did apply to stay and were rejected. Now, given that this is applying only to a tiny fraction of people, I do wonder what some of the reasons for that would be. Maybe liberal use of racial slurs and a refusal to fill out the form in Spanish, maybe. I don't know. But the permission to remain in the EU for 90 days out of 180 applies to people who may well have been living there for several years just as much as people who are just visiting. You know, and that's all there is to it. So, you know, some of these people may have been allowed, they're just too arrogant to fill the form in, or maybe they were living in Spain and they weren't registered and that's the reason they were rejected, you know, because a bit of a blind eye was turned to that in the past, not anymore. So other than some, there will be some innocents amongst them, innocent children, for example. You know, they'll be torn away from their friends as a result of this, nothing to do with them, it's not their fault. You know, but it is a fate that disproportionately affects Brexit supporters after all. And if we're going to allow ourselves a moment of grim satisfaction, it's not really worth even doing that. It was amusing to see the Daily Express refer to these British citizens as illegal immigrants. Then there was a quote from a Sean Cromer. So it's good, this. He admitted to voting leave, but didn't think he'd have to leave Spain as a result. Apparently, he didn't realise that leaving the EU meant leaving the EU. Did he not realise that Spain is in the EU? Perhaps the sun got to him. Because obviously he's not thick. Remember, he's not thick. He described how his wife was in tears. Now, we don't know whether she voted leave or remain, so I'll portion her some sympathy, give her the benefit of the doubt. She may well have been innocent in this shambles. But then he finished by saying that Spain would regret chucking him out. I mean, there's your Brexit arrogance right there. Couldn't help but laugh. I can't wait. I can't wait for someone in a year or two to link me an article in El Mundo, something like that, with the headline translated, Spanish government regrets deporting Sean Cromer and asks him to return. The article will no doubt go on to talk about Spanish MPs having received hundreds of thousands of comments demanding the return of Sean Cromer, forcing the government to act by extending a personal invitation to Mr. Cromer to return to Spain with all haste to live there permanently. It will presumably quote Mr. Cromer saying, "They had their chance, but I'm staying here now. We've grown to like the wind and the rain." Perhaps not. But let us not forget that this is what the Home Secretary Priti Patel was talking about when she boasted that she was putting an end to freedom of movement. She meant ours. She has no rights to remove freedom of movement from anyone else around Europe. We didn't have to do this. Indeed, we shouldn't have left the EU at all. But if we were going to, there was no need for the extreme Tory Brexit that we got. As much as we might not have lots of sympathy for many of these particular victims of Brexit, because, like I said, it's disproportionately Brexit supporters, so most have brought it upon themselves, not all. It's worth remembering what Sean Cromer said. He voted for Brexit, but didn't expect to have to leave Spain. In other words, the Brexit he got was not the one he thought he was getting. No, of course not. And the same applied for almost every single one of those 17 million people who voted for it. Just a few hundred disaster capitalists got what they voted for. The rest were sold lies and eagerly bought them. They were told what would likely happen, and they chose to believe the snake oil salesman rather than the experts, because they were sick of experts. Michael Gove said so. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.